All right, so if you go ahead and introduce yourself, who
My
you
name is
are.
Hove.
Hove.
Oh wait, that's Jay-Z. Uh, Mike Hinman, owner, dude in charge, the dude, WCPL, post-event, almost post-event interview.
Almost post event.
Almost
Post event.
post-event.
What season is this mark for the WCPPL?
This is the 15th season of the WCPL.
When you started it, did you think you would be doing this 15 years
Never.
later?
No, I didn't. I mean, I picked up where the XPSL and the NPPL, when they went bankrupt, left off. The NPPL owned the XPSL, which was the West Coast Regional 7-man league. I didn't think we'd be doing X-ball. I didn't think paintball would be at this place, but one thing we know with life is change is inevitable and it's consistent. So here we are 15 years later.
Do you think paintball's in a good place?
Yeah, I think it's in a pretty good place. I think there's some cultural issues we need to deal with in the sport. You know, I mean, you ask me that at the end of the day on Sunday like this, after I've heard people cry all weekend. It's a little rough. Not all weekend, but there's just been some tough ones. So, yeah, I think paintball's in a good. I mean, paintball's still fun. That's for sure. We all love paintball. I think we also love the fabric of this game, right? What happens here on the field and what happens off the field and the whole other story. So, yeah, I think paintball's in a great place.
How did you get started in paintball?
I got started in paintball. My father and I we're from San Diego. We were out in the desert, which is back far away from the ocean, halfway to Arizona, and we were out shooting real guns and happened to be driving back up a random country road, and a guy was walking down it, and my dad randomly happened to know the guy. We pulled back up on him, and the guy was a caretaker at a paintball field named Wild Woodies in Julian, California, and we had just been shooting real guns, and then there's paintball guns, and went and did it the next weekend, and we were hooked. Ended up living on the property, playing 52 weekends a year, pump guns, getting into semi-auto paintball. That was 1994.
So from 1994 to 2023, what would you say are some of the best moments you've experienced in the sport? Like top three.
I mean, obviously playing paintball with my dad, which is no longer with me, is a big one, right? It's just memories I'll always be able to hold on to. I mean, I was fortunate enough to get picked up by Dynasty, not that they really needed me in any way, shape, or form, but I was able to win World Cup with Dynasty at the height of paintball, so I think that's a huge one. And the third would probably be the invention of Aftermath, which was kind of brought up in the shadow of Dynasty. 99% of what Dynasty did was done over with the Aftermath kids, and I'm proud of a lot of those kids. And there's countless. We know the big names that are still playing the game, but there's a lot of guys out there that have literally become Navy SEALs, police officers, good human beings, every facet of life. I believe many of my players have done, you know, tugboat captains in Louisiana. I mean, you just name it. Crazy, crazy stories. So I'm proud of the friendships.
And where does your role with Aftermath lie now? As we've seen the season in 2022, you were there about halfway through, and then towards the end, you kind of stopped showing up at the events. We definitely see you still do the academy online, and you're around the guys, but what is your official role now with the San Diego Aftermath organization?
Well, the first step with that was obviously after I sold APX a couple of years ago, I've got some other businesses that I'm doing. And I just don't have enough time to travel around. We were going to X Factor or flying to a lot of practices, and I just don't have the time to be there full time. So when I decided to step back, and Wayne and the crew had picked up the team as far as the management, I don't want to be there, not second guessing people, but I don't want too many chiefs in the kitchen, you know. There needs to be one guy, the manager of the team. I still own the team. I still help financially with the team, sponsorship with the team, and I don't plan on giving up my ownership of the team, but it was just time, you know. If somebody's going to be the coach of a team like in other professional sports, you don't want to be the Jerry Jones or the Al Davis of your team that's second guessing your coach all the time. So I stepped back, and I'm happy with the team. I'm happy with where it's at. It's a positive thing. And I'll still be here. I mean, when you've been in paintball close to 30 years, I don't know if you'll ever get away from paintball, right? The idea of, I think we all get frustrated at points, right? With paintball, at some, whether we're Division 6 or a walk-on or whatever your role is in the game, we all get frustrated with it sometimes, but I'll never leave this game. I plan on being involved at some level until the day I probably die, so I'll always be around. I mean, I want the spot to stay out here on the West Coast. It was earned by a bunch of West Coast guys, and it gave a bunch of new guys that actually every player on Aftermath came through the WCPL. Every one of them was a premier player here and now play pro, and they didn't do bad in pro at their first event with the new incarnation of it. So, yeah, continue to support my local community.
You going back a little bit, talked about what season we were in of the WCPPL, and you said around when the fall of the original X-Ball, NPPL, kind of PSP era. So what year exactly did you start the WCPPL? And for those who weren't around paintball during that time, what is it that made you stand this league up?
I mean, if we're on year 15, we're in 2023, we got to start to do some math here. I believe it was 2008 that the NPPL folded. I mean, for the people that weren't around for it, NPPL folded on Thanksgiving. Everybody went home, came back after that holiday, and the doors were literally chained shut. And I believe his name was Bruce, decided enough was enough, and he was going to pull the plug. The NPPL's business model was never sustainable, right? They were trying to build, I believe, a conglomerate between events, companies. I believe they had bought like War Games, JT, or the original JT at that point. And we're going to try to make this big thing that they could sell off. And when he pulled the plug, like many businesses do, it was quick, it was sudden. So suddenly, end of November, Thanksgiving, there was not going to be a regional league anymore. It was just the West Coast had dried up. So I took it upon myself to build a league and put my best foot forward. The first year we did 7-man. We had bought turf, rolled it out at SC Village, did 7-man there. It was cool, but X-Ball was coming. And on the West Coast, it was like, this was more of a 7-man stronghold, I think, out here. And by year 2, we made the decision to go to X-Ball, and we've never looked back.
So over those 15 years, what would you say are the most impressive personal milestones you've hit with the league in growth, venue size, achievements? Like, let's beat your own chest for a moment. Like, what do you believe makes the WCPPL stand out above, the other leagues?
I mean, over the 15 years, we've seen a steady growth, right? 15 years, we've seen a recession. I think we're in a second recession now. We've seen the economy do good, do bad. We've had some trial and error. Any business or any person fails at something, right? So we've had ups, we've had downs, but over the spectrum of the 15 years, we've consistently gotten bigger, right? We're now at 118 X-Ball regional teams. We've got 20-some 3-mans playing back behind me, beginner, which is new this year. And I don't think we've ever canceled the division. Like, anytime we've said we're going to do something, we've done it, and we've seen it all the way through. Sustainability, accountability, and we're still here, right? Our championship trophy at the end of the year, in whatever division you're in, shows every name that's ever won that trophy on it. There's a legacy there, so I'm proud of that. I believe I've done good for my region. Again, nobody's perfect, but paintball's in a good spot. Fields, I mean, here you have a place that has 4 AstroTurf fields that you can come to any weekend, new player, and play airball, paintball if that's what you want to. Camp Pendleton's got 4 fields. Ambush has got 3. I mean, our local infrastructure has gotten bigger. So I'm proud of that, right? It gives people the opportunity to hopefully experience this fun that we all know. And I think that's important. I mean, I've seen a lot of players come through our league, like guys like Blake, Brandon Cornell. I mean, there's just a list of them that have come through the WCPL and become pro paintball players. So I'm stoked for all those guys too, right? We've done our part.
So would you say the mission statement of the WCPPL is more so grow West Coast paintball than it is to grow the league? Because, I mean, one in hand to mouth to the other, right? It feeds itself, kind of.
Yeah. I mean, our goal is to have cost-effective, competitive paintball for the teams out here. Not everybody can afford to travel this year 5 times. I mean, Texas is our closest NXL event. So Florida twice from here, that's 3 time zones away. Philly's 3 time zones away. Chicago's 2. Texas is 2. It's just tough for teams out here. They want to, and we've tried to promote teams to go play there. We've hired teams on in years past to help ref the league and help them go to the NXL or PSP before that. So yeah, I mean, our goal is to have a sustainable business model that I hope is here for 15 more years or even further. I hope some days my sons are running this thing. So.
Which sometimes you get to see your sons compete in the WC, it seems like. Or at least Bryce, I've seen play a few events.
Yeah, Bryce played some last year. He's senior year, working his way through high school. I'm sure he'll be back at some point. He hurt his ankle trying to be a weightlifter or being a weightlifter. He dropped a 45-pounder on his ankle and foot, so he's a little dinged up right now. But yeah, I mean, what's cool is, like today I'm walking through the pits and a random hand sticks out to shake my hand, and I love shaking everybody's hand, but guy Rhino that we grew up in the 10-man days, Bushwhackers, SC Village, in the height of 10-man paintball, just a random local that happened to come out and just say what up. It's kind of a revolving door of old faces, and I'm sure it's the same in the Midwest, Texas, Florida, right? When there's a paintball event, somebody hears about it, and they just happen to show up and you haven't seen them in 5 or 10 years. So I really don't think, the vast majority of us never really quit paintball. It's always, even when you're not back home playing paintball consistently, we're always thinking about, those fingers are twitching, we're thinking about playing paintball, because I think it's some of the most fun in all of our lives that are involved in the sport. So it's cool to see people come back and recycle back in.
So as one of the more successful event organizers and runners in the history of paintball, when we talk about longevity, consistency, and growth, from your humble opinion, what would you say is the main thing tournament paintball is doing wrong?
I mean, greed's a problem, right? In my opinion. I mean, it's tough to tell any other person how to run their business, but I can simply say in 15 years of doing it my way, we've gotten bigger. We do make some money. So, I think, I've said this before, I believe other event promoters and field owners that do small, because I mean, there has to be a triangle here, right? The base level is local. We need local fields doing local small events. Then we need regional events. And then from above me is the NXL. And I think some people make business decisions to buy themselves dinner tonight on Sunday. They do their Saturday and Sunday thing. They price it such that they have a lot of money left at the end of the weekend. But like our 3-man that we're doing down here, there's no profit in that. There's actually a loss in that. And that's to help try to grow this thing. And I think people have to look long term. I really believe that. I don't think that's happening right now in some areas and some leagues. I think competition's good. It's kind of what America's built on. It's not just a monopoly on something. So I think that's, for myself, I've always stayed humble. I think I'm a pretty accessible guy. I'm here almost every weekend at a field helping kids out. Never been paid $1 to coach. When I got guns coaching the Ironman or whatever, I just came to the local field and gave them to my friends. The guys that I knew would never get a free paintball gun in their life. I've never sold a jersey. I've probably spent $1.5 million, $1.25 million on Aftermath over all the years. Humble and kind, please and thank you is a breath away. Listen to what people have to say. Never get too big, right? We're all people. If anybody out there sticks in this for close to 30 years like I have, I'm sure you'll be about where I'm at. Just, war of attrition. Stuck it out. There's times we all want to give up in life. Life gets tough. You question why you're doing it. People question your integrity. I mean, it's tough being an event promoter. There's not one event. I remember in the PSP days, Lane Wright told me, he goes, everybody loves you right now, Mike. And it's like, yeah, it's kind of cool. And he goes, just wait. Someday they're all going to hate you. And I was like, there's no way. And I don't think everybody hates me, but man, when you have events of this size, anybody that gets up to 100+ X-ball teams, you will hear a lot of complaints. Regional bias. I was told there was regional bias. Yesterday in D2 and D3, top 4, so we're talking about 8 spots, 2 were from Southern California, 3rd and 4th place. Besides that, every other region wins. But I also realize out here this is the toughest, and I'll say it to anybody, I'll take the Pepsi challenge, This is the toughest regional league there is, period. Anywhere in the world. How do I, even on the national stage, the Vegas Misfit guys, they win our D3 last year. They go to World Cup, tie one game and beat everybody in D2. That's our D3 team. Went to D2 3 weeks later. Smashed, trophy, boys take it home. Do I think we're better than anybody? No, I think every region can spawn talent. But we are, and when the tougher it gets, the more competitive it gets, there's always questions, right? But yeah, that's what I think.
What do you think over the last 15 years is the one thing tournament paintball's gotten right?
Rate of fire. I think over the last 15 years, the one thing tournament paintball has gotten right is rate of fire. We were at like uncapped. I remember my first X-Ball event I played in the NXL, the original NXL, with Chicago Aftershock. Dude, my shock tech Timmy was shooting 22 balls a second. That is not a good look for that walk-on side. So I think, and you know, every year, 15 and a half, 13-3, 12-5, 10-5, every step down. Boy, you thought the Titanic was gonna go under. Every good decision the PSP and the NXL have made, people have just met them with the stiffest opposition. Tom Cole could literally put out the winning lottery numbers for the next Powerball, and somebody would MF that dude right into the ground. Like somebody said, you know, and we're all, because we're the second largest league in the world, right? So we're always compared to the NXL, or, you know, like there's a competition, which there is no competition. They're number one, we're number two, we're good with that. So what would you do if you were in Tom Cole's shoes? Man, I'd take them off. I'd just take them fucking shoes right off, you know what I mean? And why? Because, I mean, no matter what that dude does right, he's literally grown paintball. He has bigger numbers, less sponsorship than we've ever had in paintball. Think about this. In 7-man, Kingman, the guys that makes the $100 and some Spider, gave the NPPL $100 grand a year. Let that settle in. Like, that's a lot of $200 guns, guys.
I mean, $100 grand a year is the cost of basically 4 platinum sponsors today. So
And
like, that's, and platinum's the paint level sponsorship pretty much. So you're saying one sponsor is giving what, four of the largest sponsors.
Look at the 7-man days. And there was a ton of other sponsors that were doing the same thing. So we've seen a decline in revenue, an uptick in participation. I think the guys that have weathered this storm have done a great job, and we're still in a good place, you know? It's interesting to hear like sports like skateboarding. Like they had, you know, the original, the Dogtown guys, and then after that there was a major decline in skateboarding, and then it got popular again. Hopefully with this sport, hopefully someday we see a big uptick in our sport at some point, and hopefully everybody can work together. Something that's definitely haunted this sport. There's been a definite stifling of the pie growing because people want to hold on to their position, and it's the big guys. And a lot of those big guys are my friends, but the truth is we need small companies in this business, without a doubt, right?
Oh, I mean, I agree. I've worked for the largest company in paintball, and I have no issues with them. You know, it was great. But now I work for a retailer in paintball, and the perception is different, and it's refreshing for me. I mean, it's everybody wants to keep their percentage of the pie, but they don't understand, or they do understand, and they just don't acknowledge that a larger pie with a smaller percentage is still a larger percentage at the end of the day of take home, right?
Or a larger pie at the same percentage. Because truthfully, if you grow this thing, there's a small fraction of small companies, and they're going to stay in that area. They're probably limited by resources, investment, so on and so forth. The big companies will get bigger. But we see just like the old snake eating its tail and the circle continues situation going on in this sport, and it's just not healthy for it.
Right. I mean, because I think at the end of the day, GI is going to make the best paint in the game. I don't care what your opinion is. There's the reason why that's what you're shooting. There's the reason why that's the most sold paint in any event. It is what it is. I think HK is going to keep making the most culture trending stuff out there.
Along with Hormesis.
Along with Hormesis is the new dog, but they're coming in fast and hard. But you know, they're also product kids of HK kind of in the culture out here, so they understand. You know, I think Virtue's just going to keep making the best hopper. You know, everybody can keep throwing the rings at whatever, and you know, here at Lone Wolf, we love it. We will carry your product and we will sell it to the masses because they want options. But what would happen if everybody just focused on what they did best and allowed everybody else to focus
I
on
can
what
tell
they
you the
did
last guy that
best?
said that to me. It's Tim Montresor. We were at Jungle Island Paintball, about 30 miles from here, at an event we had there, and it was one of the last times I talked to Tim face to face. And he said, you know, with Lux and that whole situation there, he said, we've stayed in our lane. We make guns, we make barrels, right? But we haven't tried to make a goggle. We haven't gone with a full clothing line. They've just stayed in their lane, and you know, they've done well with it. So I think a lot of other companies, but it's weird, right? And I know you've seen it. Guys get involved, they keep getting bigger. And you know, the word I always use with it is that narcissism starts to grow, man. That want to take everybody else, like for me, I would never want to take the NXL out. I don't think anybody should ever have that as part of, like last year at the NXL, I wasn't there. 5-man games ran into the night. It was a bad situation. But before we even get there, how about we talk about the fact that they cut a front day off of the event because of a hurricane that came through, and they did the best they could. You think Tom tried to do that? Tom tried to do what was best. They actually removed a pro game from everybody to try to speed this thing up. But then afterwards, you know, oh, this guy's going to come up and he's got the new league and he's going to take out the NXL. Anybody that does business like that, you're not good for paintball to take somebody out. There should be great regional leagues, Texas, Florida, Midwest, out here on the West Coast. And then from here, we should cultivate talent in all these regions that get up to that national level. You know, like for myself, I don't release my dates until Tom Cole gives me his dates. Could I do it? Absolutely. Do I think many of these teams play the NXL? No. But there's a respect level. And he's the big guy, and I'm the second biggest guy, and the third biggest guy. And when the third biggest guy, the locals, ask me for my dates, I give them up before I ever give them to my players so we can all try to work together. And I think that has to happen. But the problem we run into is everybody's looking at the other guy's dinner plate and wanting his food. And that's not a good look.
Although a chain of command is very useful and organized for a reason, no one wants to follow it unless they're at the top of it.
Yeah. But at the end of the day also, and you're totally right, nobody wants to follow the pecking order. But at the end of the day, you know, for me at the WC, I'm not comparing myself to any other, to the MVPS, MSXL, USXBL, Punkerfest. Do your thing. They copy me, I don't copy them. I have to do the best job I can do for my players. I can't like worry about what's happening 2 time zones away. Just got to do me, and I got to be the best me I can be. And if that's not good enough, then it's your time to step out of the way.
I mean, as long as they're copying you, I think that's a good indication that what you're doing is the right thing, right?
You're right, but
being copied and robbed sucks, but
what I've done yesterday means nothing tomorrow. For me, it's always looking forward. How can we do better? How can we just offer a better product? But in any business, if you try to copy a Tesla's already 3 steps down the road, right? And the same in paintball. Just, you have to be unique. You have to understand. You got to have some paintball dirt under your fingernails, right? Like, you've got to be part of this. You can't just hang out at home 47 weekends and come out for 5 events and think you're a promoter. You have to hear the voice. You got to feel the pulse. And I think I've been able to do that. Knock on wood, right?
Yeah, and I would say you are definitely probably part of the main artery, let alone be the pulse. You're pumping the pulse.
Yeah.
And like you say, don't look at what I've done, but you got to look at what's coming forward.
Yeah.
What would you say is the future of tournament paintball? What is it going to look like if you know, and this is the hypothetical prediction.
No,
obviously.
I think it's, I mean, I'll lay out the blueprint, right? I think we must, like the NXL does a great job. They run great paintball tournaments. They're also a great promotion setup company, right? They roll into any park, Fatty and all the guys or whatever, they knock it out. But I think our local regional is how can we build our local infrastructure to help our players out? And then I think regional should have one-off events, right? Like for us out here, it's Vegas. We hear the NXL is going there next year. We're not going to step on those toes. If they go early, we'll go later, right? We'll do our finale there. But for us is to have a big one-off event. And I think every region should. I think Texas should have a big one-off. Florida should have a big one-off. And then promote guys up to your local NXLs that come through your neck of the woods. So like next year, if the NXL comes early in the year, WC won't have an event within 3 or 4 weeks of that one. And if that means we have to majorly change our schedule, I'm just not going to war with people. Wars are bloody, man. And everybody, you know, if you look for revenge, dig a grave for 2 people.
I mean, even if it isn't a physical toll, there's a mental toll, and that's more taxing than most things in life. I can tell you that firsthand.
Totally.
So I got my own vision, my own theory of, I think, what is the best way for paintball to go forward, and it's the NXL on the traveling level to become more D1, D2, D3, D4, D5. You know, it's high division and divisional, where the pros meet at 7 or 8 locations like pro stadiums, and you know, every week we get 2 or 3 pro matches that we can film live or then pros produce, and move it more into the MLB, NFL style of sports, right? Because that's what we always want to compare ourselves to. Everybody wants to compare themselves to the top level sports. Well, when you're at the top level sports, we look at what makes top level people. Top level people, a lot of it has to do with energy and attention to detail, complacency and focus. And one thing you pointed out the other day when we did a field layout is that in this sport, refs stand on their feet more than any other sport in the world.
Hands down.
And I can't debate that, right? Like, even as media, I'm like, yeah, you're right. So wouldn't it be easy to argue that if we only did a couple pro matches a week and refs are only reffing for 3 hours a day versus 4 days straight for 12 hours, you'd have a better ref pro match? Or you could, and we're not doing split
You're
dead,
totally right, but the problem you run into is how this sport sustains itself. Because the truth is, at the pro level, you've got Dynasty that is industry supported, but even Dynasty's had to buy their own gun company, develop their own product that helps their team. But besides them, I don't know how many teams, I mean, I guess Infamous, but even Travis could take his Pro DNA line and just do it himself, by himself, because Travis is a great designer. Most of these other top pro teams, kind of a rich dude's lapdog. And I'm not trying to, for the league to be able to fund that would be very difficult for Tom, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to put him down. I'm sure Tom would love to. I tell you what, man, I've listened to Tom a lot. Tom and I have gone back and forth. We have some funny stories, but Tom's a smart dude. I can tell you that. If anybody believes anything I have to say, Tom is a smart dude. The problem Tom has is where he's at and where he's trying to get us. It's easy for the naysayers to be negative about the energy that he puts out there.
Anyone can Monday morning quarterback.
Totally, and that's what it is. Oh, I don't think betting's a good idea. I don't think this is a good idea. The money here, like whatever it is, man, like what's Tom's angle on that? He's just trying to what? Mess up paintball? He's legitimately trying. He is the Roger Goodell for paintball that Roger Goodell is for the NFL, where franchises have gone from 400 million to 4.5 billion. And he's done it in a time, like I said, where he's getting less money, criticism for everything. Tough, man. The hurricane, we had some like mud in the pits and people were crying about it.
Oh, what's amazing about the hurricane thing is he could have actually canceled that whole event, not giving anyone their money back, and no one could have done nothing because the state declared an emergency.
Totally.
But yet he was still like, you know what, let me make this work with what I can because, you know, my weather machine made this happen.
Yeah. And actually there hasn't been a hurricane into November in like decades, but there happened to be one and that was his fault. It's just crazy, you know. And that's where I think with the culture there has to be a change, right? Like people have to understand that Tom's not just out here trying to fill his pockets up and screw everybody in the process. It's a job for Tom. Like it's a job for many of us, right? So there has to be, with a job, some level of income. But he's trying his best, you know what I mean? Like if a guy flies around and everybody thinks it's a fun job, man, I don't care what your job is, it gets old.
I mean, you're definitely going to have to pay me to allow people to motherfuck me that much, right?
Yeah,
like
100%.
You know, it's
especially when you're genuinely trying to do good. That's the tough part of it.
Yeah. So people got to be better. How do we get? You got a plan for that? How do we get to better people?
I mean, some of the current people just probably need to go away. I hate to say it like that, but I mean, it's tough. You know what I mean? I mean, maybe, and you know, to be totally fair on the other side of that, maybe there needs to be more transparency from the NXL side what Tom's doing. But if people, you know, It's like the ride along with the police back in the day. Go do a ride along with Tom, see how it is. You know, I think there would be a lot of surprised people at what goes into these events. I really do. And let's not even speak about the unsung heroes that those guys have, the Fatty and the whole setup crew that get paid what? 18 to 20 bucks an hour or something like that on average, and they're away from their families in a hotel and the Tweaker Inn, like doing setup for a week and tear down for another week, and there's a lot to it, man.
I mean, let's even Rich Telford's there setting it up, and everybody thinks he's just announcing it. It's like, no, Rich is there a week early building the box that he's got to announce
Scaffolding
on.
and everything. So I just think there's a lot more to it. It's just like these local events and regional events. Go ref a regional event. If you're in Florida, call up, what is his name, Zadell and Alex, and say, you know, my team wants to this ref this year and get paid to ref, or MSXL, or Bunkerfest, or USXBL. Go out there and see what goes on in these events. Maybe you would just calm your soup coolers a little bit. You know what I mean?
What is the most surprising thing, though, looking back at where paintball is? Because we all know we didn't think it'd get this big and paint get this cheap, but like, what's the most awestruck thing about it all for you 30 years later?
That there's still an influx of new players getting addicted to this game, like I did 20 some years ago and other guys did 30 and 40 years ago, that it's still a ton of fun. If you had told me back in the 10-man days, playing in oak trees and crawling around and the whole 9 yards, that this is where we were going to be and it was going to be so much fun. Like, people try to bring back 7-man. Good luck with it, man. Not that it's not fun, but it's not fun like this. Like, this is on steroids, and it's still fun. If you would have told me back then that this is where we're going to be, no way. And I'm pretty conservative. No way. 0% chance.
What makes it so fun? What makes X-Ball? What
because
makes
in the 10-man, you know, or 15-man before that, or even during 10-man, you had a 5-man format and hyperball and in the woods. You play 8 games. That was the standard. The gold standard was 8-game prelim. I mean, that scoreboard just went off, but it was 3-2 when we walked out here. So that match for D5 was 5 points, and you got 4 prelims, so 20 points. It's just that repetition, the breakouts. What does everybody say? The MMA of paintball? Like, it's just, you're never going to go back to boxing after you've done the MMA thing.
So is it the amount of points that gives it its intoxicating effect for you? Is it the carnage that can happen? Is it the...
Yeah. I mean, the more points you play, the more probability of something crazy happening, right? And then 10-man, crazy things happened. Chris Lasoya, Rocky, all those guys did crazy things in 10-man. But out here, you're watching D4 and D5 guys just get away with it, you know? Run, you go. I'm sure your camera's got tons of media from this week where guys are just...
Ring around the rosy, or the kid who just, you know, he sent it. He's like, I'm going to go get this guy. Then he falls and takes 15 on the ground. But he's like, you know what? I still got him.
Totally. Well, and I always say this, you know, when people question all the event promoters' integrity and so on and so forth, like, you know, we want a guy to win or whatever, you cannot script what's going to happen out here. My next event, whatever the field layout looks like, you think you kind of have an idea how this thing's about to go down, but the truth, like, we didn't think guys were going to be in that snake, right? It was going to be hard to get in there.
Oh, yeah.
Vast majority of points were won from that snake. That Dorito side that we thought people could get down, they couldn't get down. So you just never know. You cannot script what's coming. And that's what makes it so much fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's a sport like no other, right? I mean, it's...
Yeah, it's the sport when you're driving
play
home
paintball.
from paintball, you're like, wow, right? Your first times, you're back home, you know, at blast camp or wherever you guys are at, and you're just like, wow, wow. You know, you go through those points, or Monday at work, or Tuesday at dinner, you're thinking about this or that, or, you know. For me, I think about all these young players out here, Vibe or Mayhem, these other random teams that are out around me, and you watch guys get better. It's a cool thing to be part of. There is definitely a fabric to this thing that we're doing here, right? And I don't know how we can put it in words or quantify it, but it's bigger than we realize, right? It's really, even like yourself. You were in the service, right? Came back, you had done paintball before, but then you came back to it, and once this thing gets its hooks in you, for
just
all of
matters
us,
how it hooks you, right? You have to find your thing, because, I mean, when me and you first, like, really met and became friends, I was a clinic promoter, not really
Sure.
events, but putting on huge clinics. And we were talking all the time, and you're like, crazy, you're going. And then, we fast forward a couple years later, and I like filming clinics, but I'm just a guy with a camera trying to
Tell
film
the story.
your story, right?
Yeah.
Like, because that's what I'm addicted to. I'm addicted to the story that isn't. Go Sports does a great job at showing the sport and showing the
100%.
story they can show, but Go Sports can only focus on so much, right? Like, they're one company, so like me and Lone Wolf can focus here, and
Oh.
MSXL and the MaxL and all the other leagues and places we help sponsor. Because at the end of the day, the pros are awesome and Go Sports is amazing, but it's the divisional player and it's the regional events that keep me employed, keep Lone Wolf selling stuff, and keep it going.
These fields constantly playing are what keeps all of us going. The walk-ons, the airball guys that aren't really big tournament players, but they're supporting our industry. So yeah, 100%.
Like, I love X-Ball and I love tournaments, but I'll be honest, I can't wait to go to the Invasion in Normandy this year. It's literally one of the, if you've never been to the big game like that, where there's 5,000-6,000 people, 1 million paintballs in the first 20 minutes, it's
amazing.
scary.
That much paint in the air?
I put my back up against a hyperball tube to film the opening chaos, and all the team from behind me's paint was just slapping that tube, and it reminded me of being 11 years old again, like getting beat up in a hyperball tube, just thinking, this is terrifying, the noise. I was like, there's a monster coming.
But that's what makes us smile, right? It gets that blood flowing, right?
Yeah.
Again, paintball is a sport unlike any other. And we know that. I mean, I've played football and other sports, but this sport is so unique and so cool, and it brings a smile to our faces, right? All of us. And it's interesting too, right? All the walks of life, right? Like from high class to low class to no class to whatever class, you know what I mean? But when we all come here, I don't know, man. Just how I see the world, there's not a difference. That dude's an athlete, that dude's not an athlete, you know what I mean? That's the only thing I measure a man's skill by out here. Kids, 16-year-old kids become adults when they walk on the field out here.
Or they learn what it means real fast.
Real quick.
Adult.
So that's awesome.
I mean, it's even, I'm looking at your shirt, right? And it's got WCPPL, but then above it there's a weapons logo, and you go deeper, that's Todd Martinez. Then we go back to that, you look at Iron Man and Dynasty, and look at the days of playing.
Navarone and Marine team back when he was a kid in San Diego, and yeah.
I mean, did you ever think that that guy was going to be making shirts for your league and be a vendor? And
I never thought that dude was going to call me when I was at Badlands in Chicago and say, hey, why don't you and Mini Mike get on a flight and come to Oakland and play against Bob Long's team on Sunday and make Dynasty, and then get in a van and drive from Oakland back to San Diego. And that was how my weekend started, going to Chicago Midway. Then flew to Oakland, got picked up by Skinny and Todd. Todd completely arranged that whole situation. And then I was on Dynasty when I got home Monday at 1 in the morning. No, I mean, that's the paintball story, right?
So Todd Martinez has
100%.
a lot to do with how you went to Dynasty?
Without Todd Martinez, I'm not sitting here, period.
Is there any, would you like to go into detail for people a little bit about that?
I mean, right there. I mean, Todd Martinez got me on Dynasty. I was as good on Aftershock or the Bushwhackers before that as I was, well, he got me on Aftershock. Todd was on Shock at the time. I was on the Bushwhackers. Ron and I had a falling out. He got me on Shock Tech, which was their second team. I think it was called Maxim for a minute, Shock Tech. And then when Todd left, went back to Dynasty. I got moved up to Aftershock. I was there for a year and a half. And then when Todd called, I went to Dynasty, period. So without Todd, and that's the thing in paintball, right? There's a lot of guys out there that need that opportunity. I mean, I think you probably compare it to the music business, right? Was Eminem just as good as Eminem was? Yeah, but when Dre heard him, you got him there. And every musician, you just need your chance. You know what I mean? And paintball, I think there's a lot of talent out there. I think there's a lot of talent out here that just needs their chance. So yeah, without Todd, not happening.
So you say, so who would you say would be some of the teams or programs, maybe even individual players that, be on the watch that it may be 5-10 years from this league, like you're watching in your D4 and D3 divisions, or maybe.
Well, I mean, my premier division, there's some easy ones in there. I think the NorCal Kings had a great event.
Well, I think you see those in 5 years or less,
or
right?
less, yeah.
3 years. So even the premier guys.
It's like you asked the question, like the D4s, D5s, probably not whole teams, right? It's individual players that you see out there that you're like, man, that kid's going to be good. There's just kids. I mean, there's a kid on the Midway All-Stars right now that Mouse was talking to, Snake kid, that saw him run the 50 against the Academy guys on the break, clean. You know, I mean, there's good paintball players out here. The young guys, you know, are they going to stick with it? Can they do this and then also get a career outside of this, or go to school or whatever it is, and, you know, balance their lives out? But there's a lot of talent. There's 1,000+ players out here. There's probably 10, 15, 20 pro dudes sitting out here that we just don't, those eggs haven't hatched yet. Same with every other regional league, right? Midwest, Texas, Florida, there's guys. I mean, you know.
It can all go anywhere.
There's a lot of eggs waiting to hatch.
And some of the guys that you think might not go anywhere might get someone that lights that fire under their ass, and they might go somewhere.
Yeah, they just need that opportunity.
That one person to have some interest in them, to want to maybe push them.
Facts.
So as we wrap this up, because we've all had a very long couple of days, but it has been an amazing season opening weekend to the 15th season of the WCPPL. I mean, that's a milestone in itself. 15 seasons, half to 30. Like, I feel that's, you know, 10, 15s. Yeah. That's how we mark things.
It's a whole lot longer than any other leagues made it.
It is true. National or regional.
Facts.
Can't think of one. I mean, that's longer than a lot of paintball fields make it.
Facts.
Well, thanks for taking the time here.
Appreciate you guys, man.
Hope to come back soon.
Definitely. Hope to see everybody soon.